Pack your marmalade sandwiches. We're going on a trip with our pal Paddington. It's Paddington in Peru, the third movie in this Paddington series. Alonso, I know that you had great expectations going into this. How did it match up?
Well, I mean, if the worst thing you can say about this movie is that it's no Paddington 2, that's still pretty impressive. I mean, we knew it wasn't going to clear the bar of one of the greatest films of the 21st century, but I think it at least gets to be mentioned alongside of it in a way that, you know, is still pretty impressive.
It's called a hard stare, Mr. Hunter. And it's for when people have forgotten their manners.
The Browns are back, minus Sally Hawkins, who is now the role of Mary is now being played by Emily Mortimer, who's, you know, giving it her best shot.
She's
but
fine.
I mean, she's fine. She's fine. Paddington gets a letter from a nun played by Olivia Colman, who runs the Home for Retired Bears, letting him know that Aunt Lucy seems very dispirited and out of sorts, and that she really misses Paddington. So he and the Browns pack up and head to Peru on an adventure. When they get there, Aunt Lucy is missing, and she has gone off on an expedition in the journey. They think perhaps to try and find the lost city of El Dorado. So the family follows with a little help from a riverboat captain played by Antonio Banderas. And if we know anything from the previous Paddington movies, the biggest stars are always going to be trouble, whether they're Nicole Kidman or Hugh Grant. And so, you know, look to the Oscar winners and nominees here, and you know, we'll see how all that goes. In any event, you know, lessons are learned and songs are sung and marmalade sandwiches are eaten, and I really did quite enjoy this. I laughed a lot. I thought it was very charming, and I think that if the first two Paddington movies are about the experience of being an immigrant and adopting a new home and improving that new home with your presence and with what you bring to that place from where you came from, this movie, I think, is sort of about the idea that you can be an immigrant and have a new home, but that you really will always have two homes. Mm-hmm. You'll always have two places in the world where you feel you belong, where you have created family, where, you know, you have a real sense of place. You know, my parents both emigrated from Spain. I've never lived in Spain, but the few times that I've been, there's just something about it where I feel like, oh, this feels like I'm home, even though I've never been here before, you know.
There's a tug.
Yeah, there's a total tug. And so there's a scene early on where they're driving, you know, out into the jungle in Peru, and Paddington just sort of like sticks his head out the window and just sniffs, you know, and it all just kind of comes rushing back to him in so many ways. I was like, yeah, I get it. I get that feeling. And I think the movie is really smart about building on what it's had to say in the first two films about the immigrant experience and sort of adding, you know, this sort of new layer to it. Paul King, who directed the first two films, is not back. He went off to direct Wonka instead. Dougal Wilson makes his big screen debut, but King was a producer and very much involved in the film. And it feels of a piece with the first two Paddingtons, even if it doesn't achieve the sublime perfection that is Paddington 2.
That's so cool that you had that kind of profound reaction to it, you know, and I'm sure a lot of people will. I do not have that experience, so I just enjoyed it purely on like a technical level and like just the vibe of it. And it's zany. It's nuts. Like there is a musical number here that I laughed my ass off. It is so playful. It is so goofy, so intricately timed. Like Olivia Colman is giving the most gonzo performance. And she can do so much just with her eyes or with like a deranged smile. Yeah. And it's so knowing, it's so winking, and it's so much fun to see her get to let loose like that. I think we think of her as a very serious actress a lot of the time, although she was in Wonka as well. Sure. You know, The Favorite is a comedy, but in a very serious setting. I think we think of her as a serious actress, but she gets to let loose in the goofiest ways here.
Right. Well, it's like, you know, same with Emma Thompson. I think people forget, like, she had her own sort of like comedy variety show in the UK before she started coming over here and making dramatic films. My first exposure to Olivia Colman was on a BBC comedy show called Look Around You that was sort of like a parody of 70s educational shows. So it took me, I had to adjust to her being dramatic. So when she's back in silly mode, I'm like, yes, this is is the Olivia Colman I know best.
Yeah, but all of like the tactile qualities are there. It's always amazing to me when we see a movie that has like CGI talking animals and like when it looks weird and rubbery, I'm like, how is that possible? When you look at Paddington and it looks like he's actually a bear who's talking.
I always take him for granted. Like about 2/3 through the movie, like, oh right, they're all talking to a tennis ball. But you know, he's so tactile and realistic, and you know, the eyes are so expressive, and then the other actors interacting with him are so completely committing to the bit that I forget that he's you know, he's a mass of ones and zeros, you know.
Yeah, and just like the timing and the pacing and just like the clockwork precision that exists in these movies in their increasingly madcap scenes where it's like one thing building on another, and like they make it all look effortless, and it's also intricately timed, and so that like those laughs really build on each other. So that was effective for me. I had a really good time. I laughed the whole way through. I was charmed by it. You know, it is kind of a go to the place to get the thing kind of thing, and it has a lot of, it harkens to a lot of other movies in ways that are really fun. Like often that instinct for me is like, oh, there's a thing, you know, and there's a thing, you know, and hardy har. Like just the very presenting of it is enough, but they find really inspired ways into their movie references, some of which I didn't even get in the watching of it, but afterward I'm like, oh yes, of course. So I don't want to ruin it because it's so much fun, but yeah, it's working on a lot of levels all at once for everyone in the audience. Like kids will love it.
Yes.
Adults will find it moving. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, look, just ask Nicolas Cage.
Yeah. Totally. So if you're going to rank all the Paddington movies, what is your ranking of them at this point?
Well, Paddington 2, definitely the best one. I mean, maybe this is a cop out. I'd say 1 and 3 are about at the same level. Like they're both really terrific, and you know, they don't, neither of them reaches the apex that is the second one, but they both have a lot to offer. And the sort of I was thinking of this in Batman TV terms, the special guest villains are lots of fun. And so you know, this is like maybe my favorite franchise that's happening right now, you know, unless Richard Linklater makes another Before movie.
I think it really reward you for paying attention to the details too, because there's about 18 Chekhov's guns here.
Oh yeah, so much setup and payoff, and callbacks to the other two films, like running jokes and stuff. It's a delight.
Great. Imelda Staunton, too. Quite lovely always. As the voice of Aunt Lucy. She brings warmth and sweetness to this daffy, zany world. So what's your number then for Paddington and Peru?
I'm going to say an 8.8. I really liked it. And I think people, if you liked 1 and 2, you'll have a good time with this one also.
Yeah, I will say 8.5. It's a delight. It's really fun at a time of year where the pickings are slim as far as something the whole family can go see. This like more than delivers, I would say. So Paddington and Peru, pack your bags. It's in theaters this weekend.